If I'm honest.
So this is my setup, and we are gonna Hollywood this rock out tonight. Hey guys, and welcome back. It's so good to see you again tonight. I'm gonna take you out on an astrophotography outing with me to shoot the Milky Way. Now, whether you've never shot the Milky Way before, you're a total beginner, or whether you're a seasoned pro, I'm gonna share some up-to-date camera settings with you, some best practices on astrophotography, as well as I've got a little mobile download for you, a mobile cheat sheet that I've created that has everything you'll need to annihilate astrophotography. So stick around, this one is a ton of fun. Some of my viewers have commented on some of the recent Milky Way photos that I've uploaded on Facebook, Instagram, and in my previous video. The questions I'm getting are, Jason, how do you find these locations? What are your camera settings that you're using to get these results? And will my camera even do that? Well, I've taken those questions and my sort of list of workflow, and I've put it together in a digital PDF, and I'll put the link for that download in the description of this video. And if you want to go ahead and download that now, you can follow along. I find that it works better if you load it up on iBooks on your iPhone or on an Android, some sort of PDF reader, because it is an interactive PDF and you can actually check the buttons and click links. I've got app links for photo pills and AccuWeather and Clear Outside. I've got some really cool tools in this app that will really help you. So grab that and we'll follow along. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these features, but I am going to do a quick rundown. So let's kind of get started. The great thing about astrophotography is that you don't have to be a pro to get kind of wow results. And it may be a comfort to some of you to know that I haven't been shooting astrophotography for that long at all. So even on your very first outing, it's one of those things where you get out and you go through these camera settings, you do everything right, and when you first look at that camera back, you're literally like, wow. Because it gives you an ability to see the Milky Way even better than you can with your naked eye. So real quick, let's talk about this. If you're looking at this cheat sheet I've got here, the first thing you'll notice is, as astrophotographers, we kind of have to be a little bit of an amateur astronomer and meteorologist just to get started. So many of us live in suburb areas or even urban areas, and they're riddled with light pollution. So the very first thing that you have to do is to find an area with a location that's even conducive for doing astrophotography. And there's one app that right off the top I want to share with you. It's actually a website. If you go to Dark Sky Finder and you click on the interactive map, you can kind of zoom in to the area where you live. I'm real familiar with Dallas, so let's go there and look at that. I mean, it's just awful light pollution. It's white. There's no way you're going to see the Milky Way there. But if you look at this map and you see how the colors go more cool, I live in this area, and Broken Bow's over here, and check this out. You've actually got this super dark spot around Broken Bow where you can really see the Milky Way. So use Dark Sky Finder to locate an area close to where you live where you can see the stars. You may not have to drive as far as you think. Now, I've also mentioned photo pills before in earlier videos, and I'll mention it again here because it's absolutely a powerful tool to time your astrophotography. What you're looking for is a really dark night, and photo pills gives you the ability to see when the moon is going to set, when it's going to come up. You want to get out when there's a new moon or just a little sliver of a moon, because if the moon's up when you're trying to do astrophotography, it's bright enough to actually wash that out and give you enough light pollution that you can't get a clear shot. Now, another thing that can impact a clear shot is the weather. So the next app is AccuWeather, or something really reliable similar to that. I like AccuWeather because I use the interactive radar maps, and you can punch in on the US satellite and actually see the cloud cover and see if it's moving in or moving out to give you a clearing. Now, I've also mentioned Clear Outside. That's a great app to see if there's going to be fog or haze. If there's high humidity and a ton of fog in the sky, especially close to the horizon, you can get more light pollution on the horizon from distant municipal areas and cities, because that humidity gives it a medium to kind of travel through, and it washes out your sky. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the tools of this trade. Now I'm going to go through this list quickly. I'm not going to actually go through every single one, but as you can see, it's pretty thorough. And if you follow this, it will help make sure you don't leave something behind, and it'll give you a checklist to go through interactively and check off the things that you've packed, like charge your stinking batteries. I mean, who hasn't done that? I've gone completely out on shoots before and not even had batteries because they were at home on the charger. The other thing is you want to make sure you have your widest angle lens for astrophotography. Pack your lens cloths and cleaning tools because bugs will get on your lens. You want to have that little puffer blower that you can clean that lens off. You want to make sure you have a really sturdy tripod. I've talked about my Robus 8880. This thing is absolutely a tank. I use it for astrophotography because you want that solid base. Okay? Now, pack your flashlight. You need a source of light. You're going to be out there trudging around in the dark. I really like this little Craftsman headlamp because it has tons of different settings. Like, you can turn it on full-on flashlight so you can walk around and see where you're going, or you can dial it down to the little red dot scope so you don't just blind yourself and you can see the camera back. You can look for little things, but make sure that you remember to turn this off before you take a shot because even that red glow can affect your shot. All right, now let's talk about things for you. Pack layers of clothing because in the overnight hours maybe it gets a little cooler. We don't have to worry about that as much in Texas and Oklahoma, but where you live may get a little bit chilly. Pack plenty of water. If you're out doing astrophotography like me, you might find that you linger and end up staying hours longer than you meant to. My wife can probably attest to that. She's seen me say I'm coming home at a certain time and I'm coming home like 2 hours later, end up home at 3 a.m. Yeah, so the next thing is to pack proper footwear. Say you're going down in the water and you're going through sharp rocks and you don't want something to impact your shot just because you can't navigate the area. You want to wear shoes that are comfortable. You're going to be on your feet for a long time throughout the evening. And you might even pack your snake boots. In my last episode you saw where I was standing in about 4 inches of pond water. I had some visitors. I had snakes going around my feet. So astrophotography can get a little interesting at times. And consider wearing clothing with pockets. I wear cargo shorts, cargo pants. I've even got a fishing shirt that I'm starting to wear because it has a pocket. That's great to put your bulb, your lens cloths and things in because you don't want to lay those things around down on the ground. You're going to have to find them in the dark. So I find that it's much better if you have those on your person so you can get at them easily. And then remember your reading glasses. I'm over 40 and I should probably make sure I take mine too because focusing for astrophotography is a fine craft. It's sometimes hard to see what your screen is telling you and it's hard to focus your eyes on that tiny little dot, so make sure you take your reading glasses. And with that, now it's time to get out on the scene, so let's go to Broken Bow. Okay, I'm out here at Broken Bow. I'm at the Eagle Drive Day Use area, which is one of my favorite places on Broken Bow Lake. Just behind me over my shoulder is my favorite swimming hole that I bring my kids out here to. We've been coming here for years and we just love it. And that's one of the reasons I chose this location for tonight to do astrophotography. Now, as you can see, I got here well before dark. I've scouted the scene, I've scouted the location. Really love these rocks, and I love the trees that you can't see right now up on the hill, but they're also going to be part of my subject. And the Milky Way is going to come right down between that island and these trees. So what I want to do today, and we'll get to light painting and using artificial light later, but I'm going to teach you guys how to do a 3-shot composite that uses natural light to freeze the trees and give you definition and all the details and be able to see it with your night sky. Because if you shoot just the stars, and there's no ambient light, all those trees are just going to be black, okay? So what I'm going to do first is as the sun sets, I'm waiting on that last little bit of light to leave the shore on the very far edge of the lake. It just is leaving the tip of that tree on the island right now. So the first shot I'm going to get as the sort of pink sunset after the sun sets, it gets that nice soft color. I'm going to shoot a fast shutter speed panorama, multi-frame panorama, but I'm going to shoot that at about 1/125 or 1/160. And what that's going to do is isolate and freeze those leaves. There's always a little bit of a breeze blowing out here, and I'm kind of glad because it's hot. July 30th to be more specific. But that's when you do astrophotography, when the Milky Way is most visible in the northern hemisphere. But then naturally, as the sun's setting, what I've been doing is taking another panorama, because I love to sort of soften that water. I love to see where the waves are sort of lapping up on the shore, especially after boats like this one pass by a little closer. You get those waves lapping up on the rocks, and during a 30-second exposure, you can really soften that water and get a nice little glow. The third shot is, of course, the nightscape. I'll shoot another panorama with about a 20-second exposure. I'll get into that in a little bit. And then in post, I will layer those 3 images together. I'll stitch them first independently, then I'll bring them in Photoshop and I'll layer them together. And what that'll give me the ability to do is isolate and select how much light and how much detail I want to bring into that final composition, so that it gives me detail in the rocks, detail in the trees, it freezes the trees, because we don't really want blurry trees, right? So I'm just waiting right now for that last little bit of glow, and then I'm going to get started. Look at the colors that we have on this sky tonight. You know what? It's time to start shooting. I'm at 1/125th of a second at f4. And actually what I'm going to go ahead and do now is set my timer for 2 seconds. Even though I'm at 1/125, I just don't want any camera movement, any camera shake. Notice I'm tilted down just a little bit. I'm not really as worried about the sky in these frames as I am the foreground. This is really my foreground shot of the lake and these rocks. And the reason I'm doing such a wide panorama is because the Milky Way right here is going to look kind of like a rainbow. And the rainbow is going to go pretty much right over top of that island. And I don't want to just crop the shot halfway midstream of the Milky Way. If you're going to do a panorama, it's like go big or go home, right? So I'm going to do the whole Milky Way as much as you can see, and I know that it's going to stop somewhere over there. Why? Because I looked on Photo Pills, used their augmented reality and scanned the sky, and I saw where the Milky Way was going to be. Okay, now I'm ready to start shooting the Milky Way. So right away, the very first thing I'm going to do is check all my camera settings. Now that the sun's down, everything's different. I have to go and just set up the camera totally differently. So right from the top, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I'm at 14 millimeters, which I am. I'm at f4, that's as low as we can go. And then using one of the 2 methods is the 500 rule to determine what our shutter speed should be. Now the old convention was the 500 rule, and that's just you take 500 and simply divide your focal length into that, which is 14. So 500 divided by 14 is around 36. But I know I can't get by with a 36-second exposure on this camera, or else I'll see little star trails. So I'm going to use the NFP method, which is a newer method that I'll post that basically arrives at, for this lens, I can only get by with about a 20-second exposure. It's technically 19 point something. But I'm going to try a 4,000th of a second exposure just to see how it works. So I'm going to go through a couple more settings. I'm in manual focus. Really quickly, don't get intimidated by manual focus. If you forget to do your infinity focus before the sun sets, or you accidentally bump your focus ring, don't worry about it, because these new mirrorless cameras, what I love about them is that you can just punch in, not zoom in. I want to clarify, you punch in on the screen, so you're actually like making the screen bigger. And you find that one bright star, I think what I'm looking at, it's not really a star, I think it's Jupiter, but you carefully go back and forth on that focus ring, which I've already done, and get that little dot as small as you possibly can on the screen. And then you're in perfect focus for these stars. Lastly, go into your menu settings and make sure you've turned vibration reduction off, because we're not taking video, we're not moving the camera around. We don't need a sensor that's free to float around and move and try to take out any kind of vibration. We are on a locked off tripod. So we're gonna turn off the vibration reduction. We're gonna turn noise reduction on, and there's two types of noise reduction that I have in this camera. If I go into my settings, I have long exposure noise reduction. I'm gonna turn that on so that the shutter will basically open and close and it'll sit there and do noise reduction. And I also have ISO noise reduction turned on. So turn those on. So we've got it all checked out. Lastly, I'm gonna set a timer for 2 seconds so that I am not touching the camera when the shutter actually releases. So if you run down that list, we should be ready to rock and roll. So I've got my camera now positioned a little bit more up. Before, my panorama was mainly focused on the foreground. Now I'm starting to get a little bit above the horizon more to get the Milky Way. And I waited until it got totally dark. If you can see where you're walking around with your naked eye, it's not dark enough. You need to wait until it's pitch black, where you have to use a headlamp or some other light source like your phone in order to see. Be careful, get out there, and let's get this thing done. So I'm gonna strike the light for a second, take this shot, and evaluate and see where we are. All right, now I'm gonna review my shot, and I like where we are. You know, ISO 4000, I mean, it's pretty bright. I also wanna mention one last thing, and that is to make sure that you've turned the monitor brightness down on your camera. So just simply go into your menu and turn your screen brightness down. As you review, that can throw you off. If you have your screen brightness set for normal, then your shots are gonna look super bright, but then you get back on your computer and you're like, why does everything look dark? My monitor brightness is down, but it's not all the way down. There we go. So now we're all the way down. I'm going to continue shooting. I may bump up the ISO to 5000 and take a shot and see how that works also. You know what? I think 5000 is going to be the number I go with. I'm going to start now. I'm going to kill this light. I'm going to actually execute my entire panorama. I'm going to sweep that exact same scene at 5000 on the ISO. I'm at f4 and 20 seconds with a 14 to 30 f4 lens. So let's see how this panorama turns out. So now that you got your shots in the can, you're back home, it's time to see what you've got. Okay, here we are in Lightroom. This is one of my first shots, and you can see up here that I shot this at ISO 4000. Here's another one over here that I shot at 6000. I was checking my Z7 to see how it performed, and I'm not too happy with ISO 6400. That's where this sensor really starts to fall apart. So what I did is I dialed that back, and I ended up going with about ISO 5000. I felt like that was the maximum value I could plug into that Z7. So I shot this entire Milky Way, and I did a composite of about 9 images, and I stitched those together. Now you can see that it did some distortion. That's because I had that 14mm lens pointed up at an angle, and so it's going to get a little weird on the corners, but don't worry too much about that in post. So this is the Milky Way, and I'll edit out the little jet streaks in Photoshop. So this is the first shot that I took with a fast shutter speed. Now, if I undo the little edits that I've done on it, you can see this is what it looked like as a raw photo, okay? Let me undo that. I'm crushing it down because there's no way I'm going to leave it that bright in final, okay? But I'm making the sky as contrasty as I can so that I can isolate those trees in Photoshop. But I don't really like this choppy water. So I went ahead and made another exposure right before the sun set that was a little longer, which gave me all this nice soft textureless water. And I love how this is automatically going cool, and I'm even going to cool that down more. I'm going to make it more contrasty. So let's go to Photoshop and see how that would work. Wow, so here we go. This is one I've already done some work on, but just so you can see how I got here really quickly, I'm going to show you how to import these 3 images and make them into a composite. I go up to File and I go up to Scripts, load files into a stack. I'm going to browse and I'll find all three of those panoramas that I just showed you in Lightroom. And I'm going to tell it to attempt to automatically align those source images. It's going to take it a second to do that. It's got to think about it a little bit. And notice I haven't cropped anything yet. I like having all of that pixel data all the way to the edge. And once you open all of these layers, I may have to do a little shuffle-roo on them, put them in the right order. Okay, here we go. There's our output. Now I'm going to take the star pano to the bottom, and I'm going to take the sharp trees, which is my short shutter, all the way to the top. I'm going to turn those off. I'm going to duplicate that by hitting Command J. I'm going to duplicate it again just to give me an extra one. Now the main thing that I want to do right now is to get this as contrasty as possible. So I'll go up to Image, Adjustments, and I go to Exposure, and I'm going to take that offset down, and I'm going to bring the exposure up, and that's going to give me almost black trees, and that's what I want. That's what I want here. Probably in there because I don't want to lose those little limbs. And then I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and I'm going to find the blues, the remaining blues in the sky, and I'm going to lighten them up a ton. I'm sensing there's some cyans in there too. I'll just blast those out, get rid of those. We got some lingering magentas. I'm going to crush, or not crush them, but I'm going to blast those out too. And now we've got a real contrasty shot. So what I can do now is simply just go over here and grab my magic wand tool, click on that sky, and I'm going to go up to Select Similar, and that's going to give me even more of that area around the trees that I'm looking for. And then if I go to Select Inverse, it's going to just select the darks of the trees. Now I can turn that off. I can turn on that other layer that I saved and make that into a layer mask. So now we just have the detail areas of those sharp leaves and trees. So to skip ahead a little bit with what I actually did, so just to show you where those layers are in here, it's the exact same thing that I just did. So there are my tree layers, and let me kind of punch in and show you how those really work. So if I kind of zoom in a little bit here, there's really no way that I would leave those all the way up in their brightest form. So I did Command L on levels, and I kind of crushed those trees back down a little bit. But then I also took the opacity of them down to about 90. And you can see if it was all the way down, it would just be black. So that's the star shot. That's what you're going to get with no ambient light. And that's why you do these composites, because then you can bring up a little bit more detail to make your trees and rocks and everything have definition. So I did the exact same thing on my favorite layer, which is this. Let me just turn off everything but that layer. So now you can see I've got the rocks and this water over here from that soft, long exposure. And you can play around with dodging and burning and revealing or hiding using layer masks over here any parts of the photo that you want to keep and blend in together. I love how this 14mm lens distorts these rocks when you make a pano. It makes everything seem real circular, and I really love that. So the very last thing that I would do is I would crop this image. I'm going to bring the edge in a little bit. I'm probably going to try to clone that edge over there, but I love having this part of the sky on the other side of that tree. That's going to create a little bit of a problem, but with cloning I can take care of that real easily. So let's let this thing think about it for a second. This is a super high resolution image, so it's asking a lot of my computer.
5 minutes.
Okay. All right, so you can see the areas that I need to fill in, and with the clone tool I should be able to do that with no problem. I'm going to make a new layer, make sure it says current and below, And I'm just going to look for these patterns of rock that I can kind of duplicate and continue those lines. Rocks aren't too terrible. Yeah. Alright, I don't like that part. I'll fix, there we go. And then down here I can fix this part. And then lastly what I may do is another layer, and I'll do the gradient tool. I like to use the radial gradient because then I can be really selective at how I want to kind of feather off this border. I might darken these rocks, I might darken these down here. But anyway, you can kind of play around with this final composite image and just really get stunning results. So one thing you're going to notice really quickly about astrophotography is that it's a pretty tiresome craft. You got to be up late, you're going to miss out on sleep, but hang in there. Let me encourage you to do that, because there's a big blessing that you get, and it's not just that shot you have at the end. See, when you're out there and the sun finally goes away and all that ambient light goes away and you've taken the time to get out of all the light pollution, you're in this dark location and your eyes finally adjust. It's absolutely breathtaking to ponder God's creation and just the vastness of it. Our human eye can't even come close to seeing it all. Even with our cameras collecting a little more light, can't do it justice. Not even the most advanced telescopes and technology, radio telescopes, whatever we try to see it with, we can't even see the vastness of it. God is just that big. So I encourage you to get out and spend some time with Him. Get out and lay under the stars, and in between shooting your shots, you're waiting on that 20-second exposure, 30-second exposure to cook off. You're just standing there looking up and just being like, wow. It can cause you to ask questions too, like, why so big? Why so many? Ask Him those questions. So I hope this has encouraged you to get out and shoot some astrophotography. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Give me a little thumbs up and like this video, and click that little bell so that you'll know every single time I go live with another episode. And on this one, remember to get my mobile download, because I really feel like my digital cheat sheet will really help you with your astrophotography. I wish you the best of luck, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I love getting feedback. And until next time, I hope that we can all get out and explore God's creation with childlike wonder. I'll see you again on the next episode.